And they machen a Frau in Parsha Shlach. It says in the pasuk, Ish echad lamata v'esav tishlochu, kol nosi bahem. That they sent one person for each tribe. So every tribe had an elder, and they went into Israel in order to see how they're going to capture the land. So he says, when a person wants to serve the divine purpose in truth, he has to have two different sides of his personality. He has to develop two areas in order to gain access to real service, to serving the real purpose. The first thing is that he needs to unite his purpose to realize the unity within each individual. The Hainu, which means as if he alone is in the world and there's nobody else. The world was created specifically for him. It's like his training ground to become the true version of himself. So his spirit comes into a world that is like a hostile simulation. It's like the spirit is torn between its true nature and the society, the way that people behave, the way that people are used to interacting with each other. So now the spirit is trying to overcome all the wrong messages, all the unhealthy beliefs, in order to become a true version of itself. So in this war, the spirit is fighting forces that it doesn't need to take personally at all. It should look at the world as if the whole world was created specifically for it, and therefore everything that's happening is technical. Everything that's happening is to learn, to become better, to become stronger, to become immune, so that we can face the challenges that life will present to us in order to realize our true nature, in order to become big enough, in order to become strong enough and real enough to gain access to what it means to be us. To get a little more of a taste of what this experience is really about. What's the purpose? What's the reason for it? So when a person wants to work in truth, he wants to serve the real purpose, he has to believe, he has to see himself as if he's the only one in the world. He's the only one that exists. If a person sees himself that way, then he sees Hashem without cover, without a dress, without clothing. Because when we interact with other people, we dress the Creator in what we're seeing in others. And when we dress the Creator in what we see in others, then our spirit doesn't know how to find itself. It doesn't know how to realize its truth because it's confused by the information that it's receiving. So when a person realizes the unity within himself, he realizes how his unity is directly corresponding to the unity of the Creator, and so his purpose is to find a true manifestation for his world, his truth, whatever that might be. So then HaKadosh Baruch Hu reveals himself in accordance with that neshama, without dressing up in interpretations of other neshamas, in interpretations of other people, interpretations of things that can be unhealthy to the one that's perceiving. So he says, a person cannot ascend with you. When a person is going to meet the Creator, when a person is going to meet the true nature of his being, there's nobody else that can go with him. This is a road, this is a journey that every person has to take for himself. A person can have many people around him even while he's on his journey, but nobody can experience what he's experiencing. Nobody can understand what he's going through. That's something that's individual to each one. That's something that language cannot express. And so, v'ish le'al imach, a person cannot go up with you. When you're going to ascend, when you're going to start realizing truth, when your beliefs are going to start affecting your biology and you're going to start feeling differently about life, that's going to be a journey that is individual to you. It's just like every flower that opens up on its own path, it has its own way, it has its own shapes as it tries to evolve and become a full, complete flower. So the same way a soul, as it becomes aware, as it opens up, it has its own journey, it has its own realization, it has its own recognition of what it means to be it. And so, v'ish le'al imach, nobody can go up with you. There should be no other people in the Oil Moed. When the Kohen, when the priest would go in order to be mechaper, in order to find forgiveness, there shouldn't be any people in there. Which means that when a person wants to gain forgiveness, a person wants to go into the depth of his heart in order to restore his original relationship with life, in order to restore his desire for realization, for truth. So a person cannot take with him anybody else over there. Nobody else belongs in there except you. That's what it means that it's the Holy of Holies, the inner sanctum. It means that it's a place that's sacred. It's a place that nobody can contaminate. Shouldn't allow anybody else into that place. Nobody else's opinions, nobody else's judgments, nobody else's interpretations of life, because it might be toxic to us. And this is something that affects the very core of our experience, the very core of our life. It touches our soul. So we can't allow into that holy place opinions or beliefs that are foreign to our nature, that don't belong. And so we can't take ideas and beliefs that are gained from external sources, from different behaviors of people, and take that into a place that is at the very core of our experience, that can affect how we experience life in a way that separates us from the truth. So we want to come for forgiveness. Forgiveness means that we are willing to shed all the different interpretations that have caused us to come and be in conflict with life, and we want to find peace, we want to find unity, we want to come back to the source. So when we come back to the source, there's nobody else there, there's no people there, there's no personalities there. So this is one side. So he said when somebody wants to work the true purpose of life, he needs two bechinas, he needs two different areas of his personality to develop. So the first one was the realization that Bishvili Nivra Olam, the whole world was created just for me. It's my world, because from my perspective, whatever I do, that is my world. Everything else is not really directly in my domain. I'm just interacting with it. I have no control over it. So the part that I control, that's my entire world. That's the whole world. In my world, there's planets, there's stars, there are people, there are animals, there are trees, but it's all in my world. It's all in my interpretation. It's all in my understanding from the very core, from where I perceive. So all these are specific to me. This is my experience. This is my world. This is my truth. And so in this world was created specifically for me. And this world, to this world, I have to devote all my attention, all my energy, all my power to make sure that I build this world as best as I can for my own soul. So my soul can have the proper experience, so my soul can journey into realizing the truth, so that it doesn't eventually come to a place where everything it worked and built and created turns out to be meaningless. So a person needs to realize that he is alone in his world. His world is only going to be built by him. There's nobody else that's going to build his world. To the extent that he's going to build his world, he's going to have a world. To the extent that he's not going to build a world, there's not going to be a world for him. Because he is his world. He is the reality that he's building. He is the reality that he's going to receive. So this is one side that needs to be developed. The other side, that a person needs to include himself with all the other creatures. Everything that was created in life is really one unit. All of us are one nefesh, talking to itself right now through many different ears, trying to understand its purpose. And so this awareness needs to be developed. This awareness needs to become real and concrete, that we are one with everything else. We are one face of a multifaceted creature that has over 8 billion faces right now, called humanity. So this creature is a part of a bigger creature that is called the globe. And the globe is a part of a bigger creature called the solar system. And so all these come together to make what the ancient people call the big man. The big man is a spiritual being in the form of the human, using similar forces that animate the human body. And that big man is the life force that we are all a part of. And each one of us receives a flow, a spiritual message from that big man, from that ultimate reality, and that's called a thought. So to the extent that we don't contaminate our minds, the thoughts that we receive are coming from the bigger reality, the deeper reality. So that's called the collective soul. So all our thoughts are coming from the collective soul, but they filter through the individual soul before they come into awareness. So the collective soul is thinking, and the individual soul is interpreting those thoughts, those underlying currents that are creating our thoughts. And when the individual thought interprets, that's where things can go wrong. Because if the settings in the brain are wrong, if the heart is in a negative emotion, then these things will affect how the thought is interpreted. So prophecy meant an individual soul that becomes transparent. So it can just tap into the collective soul directly without distorting the interpretation, without distorting the message. So a person needs to become aware of the fact that he is part of a collective. He is not just an individual. Yes, from his individual experience, he is the whole world, because he's a microcosm of a big macro, of a huge universe. But at the same time, he is one face of that universe. What is the universe? Well, let's look at what it is and the intelligence that expresses itself from within that universe. And then we find people. Human beings are the most articulate in the universe. So if we're going to try to understand the universe, we're going to listen to the humans first. And so each individual represents the universe, represents the solar system, represents our planet, represents the creatures, represents humanity, represents their family, their nationality, their race. We represent to each other what it means to be human. And so we are all a face of something bigger, something more. So we have to realize, we have to become aware of this relationship. This relationship is a relationship that is created within reality. It's something that we cannot separate ourselves from. It's something that we'll become very, very aware of the moment we leave our bodies. So we want to remain aware even while we're still in our bodies, so that we can gain access to more truth. So he says, to include himself, Mishilshul Kotten, from a tiny creature on the sea to Adreima Shebalavon, till the biggest mammals. Everybody is included in this one being that's expressing itself as life. So this is all one big natural system that creates all of us. So even though we're aware within that system, it doesn't change how the system works. The system is what it is. And it's very complex, and it's designed to perfection. And so when we are not thinking to perfection, when we're not trained properly, or we're trained wrong, then we cause this system to misbehave. And that's obviously not in our best interest. That's not helping us any. So it says, everything, all these creatures are included in one big reality that we are all a part of. Like the King David says, we should praise him from the heavens, we should praise him from the earth. And he goes through all the different things that should praise him, meaning that everything is praising. Who are they praising? They're praising the life force that is within them, that makes them be. So all the praise is coming from all the details of what is taking place. All the details are telling us that something, somewhere, somehow decided that these details should be. And so when we experience them, it brings praise to the intelligence that designed it all. Same way a person needs to attach himself to all the souls, so that he can experience the reality that is behind the physical. That humanity is one big soul. And that's why we're so contagious. That's why we affect each other so strongly, emotionally and ideologically, because we're one big soul. We're constantly checking with each other to see if we're part of the collective, if we fit, if we're still okay. So this awareness allows us to celebrate our similarity, so that we can give each other comfort, so that we can find beliefs where we can all rejoice together. Like he says in the Baal Shem Tov, to include himself with all the souls, everybody that is experiencing life in this moment, and everybody that ever experienced life, to include yourself with them, to realize that you are one with them and they are one with you. There is no separation. You're all manifestations of the same source, of the same unit, trying to figure itself out. There's no distinction other than in your own imagination. So therefore, a person needs to include himself, realize that there is a unity, that there is one, that this force, that this being, that this self that we are all trying to become is the same self. It's one self. There's no distinction. So he includes himself with them, and he includes them in him. That everything that he does that is good, he's not doing it only for himself, for his own benefit. He's doing it as a representative of humanity. He's trying to represent humanity in a better form than it was till now. And therefore, every good thing that he's doing it for the benefit of humanity. He's doing it as a member of the human race. He's doing it as a member of Klal Yisrael. He's doing it as an individual that is trying to demonstrate what it means to be human on a deeper level. And so then he includes humanity with him. In every letter that a person utters, There are worlds, there are souls, and there's divinity. And so a person should include himself with everybody else so that when he interacts with life, life interacts with him in a way that leads towards unity, in a way that goes away from conflict and back to peace, back to unification. This is where you can see in the pasuk these two concepts where we said that a person has to be in the mindset that he himself is the whole world was created just for him, and at the same time have the mindset that he is just one face of a much bigger creature. He is just one aspect of a much bigger reality. So those two realities he needs to combine, he needs to experience together. So he brings it from the pasuk, Shlach lecha anoshim, send people, Targum shel vayfashit vayishlach. V'zeh yesh loimer, v'shetafshit v'tosim chol kol anoshis. Shlach lecha anoshim, he says, take off from yourself all the humanity. Whatever you think it means to be human, remove that from yourself, because that's not what it means. Look deeper. So, shlach lecha anoshim, remove all the humanities, v'yisir es eretz Canaan, and go and check out the land of Canaan. Don't leave with yourself only what you need to attach to the Shekhinah, only what you need to attach to the real truth. For this he needs many people. So for this, on the one hand, he's removing his humanity, he's removing his social circle, he's removing himself from everybody because he wants to realize his truth. He wants to go and recognize the world that was created just for him. But at the same time, he needs to have the ability to interact and to become one with the greater whole that he's representing. He's part of something bigger. So the reason for the separation is to heal, because when the collective is not healthy, we need to separate so that we can heal. And then we bring healing back to the collective. So the healing is not simply that we're running away from the collective to heal ourselves and then we're looking out for ourselves, we just want to feel comfortable. But the healing of ourselves is so that we can bring healing to the collective, so that we can include ourselves with everybody else, and so that we can help the ultimate purpose. So he says, Kiriv letzadikim no lehem v'no lo'elam, people being close to each other when they're righteous, that's good for them and it's good for the world. The more people are doing the right service, the more the Shekhinah becomes present, the more it becomes obvious that something real is happening. And so, to be together is good when people are righteous, but when people are not righteous, being together is not good. So for people who are not righteous, if somebody wants to find truth, if somebody wants to get closer to something real, they have to separate, they have to go away from the collective in order to find healing, in order to find truth. And then they can return. And then as they can create more people that recognize truth, then there's more presence of the Shekhinah. Then there's more divinity that becomes obvious. Like the pasuk says, every place where I will remember my name, I will come and I will give you a blessing. So every place where the truth becomes known, there's a blessing, there's a change in how that person, how those people will experience life. So it's saying, what does it mean that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will remember his name? Remembering his name means that he will allow his presence to dwell within that person. Tzadikim, the righteous, in front of the divine presence, are like a candle in front of a flame. So the more tzaddikim I'm going to have, the more righteous people are going to serve the true purpose. The more candles there's going to be. The more candles there's going to be, the more there's going to be the presence of the Shekhinah, the more the flame is going to become big. For this reason, he has to include himself with everybody else, with all the creatures. It's all for the purpose of bringing everything back to its root, everything back to its source, to bring the divine presence back into life. So he says, Ish echad. So the pasuk says he should be one person. It means that he should be alone. He should realize that the world was created for him. HaKadosh will show to him himself without any dress, without any levushim, without any cover. Dain Hashem echad bli levushim. וזה הכיף שני פעמים איש אחד למטה ואיסף תשלוחי פר שעדי זה תרם הכל ותתו איסם לבחינס מויכין שהם בחינס אובס והובן. So he should be למטה avoisav, he should bring them towards their forefathers, meaning that he should light up within them their understanding, because this was the original intent of why this tribe was chosen, why Klal Yisrael was chosen, is so that they can find understanding in the deeper truth, so that they can recognize the vision that their forefathers had for the human experience. So from here we can also understand how a person is supposed to leave the physical, completely forget his physical body when he's in prayer, so that the soul should experience itself simply as a thought and not as a body. And when that happens, the awareness, the attention can go so deep that it can make a change in the collective soul. So it says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu should give us the merit that us and our children and our grandchildren should be serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu in truth, so that we shouldn't waste our time, we shouldn't waste our energy trying to build things, trying to do things that are going to eventually turn out to be meaningless. We should be able to create with our energy something real, something truth, something that's meaningful to the one that created life, something that's meaningful within the context of the purpose of why we're really here. So we should all be zoicha. HaKadosh Baruch Hu should teach us his truth and redeem us. B'mher b'yameinu.
I heard someone saying that Reb Tzodok could be also translated as connection.
Yes.
Could you talk that a little bit in terms of...
Yeah, so the word mitzvah is a lashon of tzav. Tzav is a lashon of tzavta, like tzevet, like a team. So it means like a group, to connect things together, to make a grouping. So the purpose of the mitzvah is to connect the one that was created to the purpose why he was created. The purpose why he was created, we call that the creator, because the creator designed the purpose. So that's our relationship. What's the relationship between the creator and the created? The relationship is the purpose. So as we, the created, can tune into the purpose, then we align our perception of reality with the creator's perception of reality. When we don't understand the purpose appropriately, then there's distance between us. So the mitzvahs are here to attach us to that purpose, to attach us to the creator, to attach us to something that allows us to find the meaning of this experience. Because without that, it's like we're separated from the source of our life. We're separated from our purpose. We're separated from the most important knowledge that we can possibly acquire. So when we're busy with the mundane, we're busy with survival. And survival doesn't seem to be meaningful. So survival doesn't seem to have a purpose. And so we have the mitzvahs so that we can attach ourselves to something more real. We can attach ourselves to the realization that life is not simply about survival. There's a real purpose why this was put in place. There's a real reason of why we're here and how this is supposed to work. So the mitzvahs attach us to that place. The mitzvahs attach us to that truth. So that's why the mitzvahs are called a candle. Ner mitzvah v'Torah. So the mitzvah is like a candle that allows the light of the wisdom to shine within the physical world, to shine within the practical life. So this attaches us to that light. It attaches us to that truth. And that's the basis of all ritual. That's the basis of all spiritual service, is to prepare vessels for the one that's been created, to allow him to receive more light from the Creator. The Creator created a tremendous amount of light, unlimited light. And the created doesn't have the vessels to tap into that light. So the mitzvahs allow us to create vessels, so that the rituals give us the vessels. They give us the physical maneuvers that allows our attention to focus on things and make them important and develop them and dedicate time to them and energy. And then they become vessels for deeper understanding. They become vessels for wisdom. So that's why that's where the lashon of mitzvah comes from.
Just one more second.
Yes.
So how does it, in practice, how does it work? Let's say, okay, we are commanded to eat matzah on Pesach. So eat the matzah, and then what? What do I?
Right. So for this we have the secrets. This is called the kavanot. So people who learn Kabbalah, they have kavanot of the mitzvahs, which means that when they do something, they're not just doing something, they're also realizing something. They understand what they're trying to affect their soul with, so that there's an actual shift. They're convincing the imagination something where after the mitzvah it's going to look different than it did before the mitzvah. Something really changed in them. So the ultimate purpose is that a person should become the real self. The real self is a setting that we've lost. We don't know what that looks like. So only by a person doing actions that will bring him back to that real self can he eventually realize himself. So it starts with actions, and those actions, they build capacity for deeper understanding, for a shift in how we see life, how we perceive reality. So people would dedicate themselves to the mitzvahs in a way where they would try to understand every nuance, every halacha, every detail. What does it really mean? Why? Why would it be different if I do it this way or that way? What's the meaning? And the meaning is very subtle. The meaning is very deep. There's a language here. So action is based on interacting with nature. Nature is a language. Nature means something. Everything that we are, everything that we have, everything that we can see in our bodies, for example, the shape, the sizes, the colors, they all have meaning. There's a language here that nature is speaking. And we don't interact with that language the way that we should. And so we have an ancient language, we have an ancient tradition that gives us access to this truth, that gives us access to this understanding of nature. But these things have to be pondered at a very deep level. So some mitzvahs we can have a more easy time understanding of what the purpose is and how it brings us closer to our soul. And some mitzvahs are very deep and very foreign to our way of thinking, and we don't really understand the impact. But they were all built for that purpose.
Is there a source we can learn this kavanot?
The biggest source for kavanot is the kavanot of the Arizal. But it's very, very advanced. It's not simple. But we can, even the Sefer HaKuna that has just the regular Tama mitzvahs, they give you reasons for mitzvahs. Reasons are already some form of kavanah. If you understand why, then your mind is already opening up to it more. You're already becoming something. If you don't have any idea what you're doing or why you're doing, so the emotions are not going to be authentic. You can't have a real emotion about something you don't understand at all what you're doing. So any form of reason can help create emotion. The deeper the reason, the more meaningful the emotion, until a person reaches a level where he can interact with it on a real basis, where it's meaningful to him to the extent that he's different before and after, which is obviously the ultimate purpose.
Are these Kabbalah individualized, or it's like one fits all?
No, it really is very individual. It's not only individual to the person, it's individual to each time he does the mitzvah. But the language, to understand a little bit the basis of how to go about that, for that we have all the Sfarim. So ultimately, it's the neshama that's going to give meaning to something in the moment that it's taking place. And that moment is unique. That moment is never going to take place for anybody else, and even for that same person. It's just never going to happen. So it's always going to be different. Each kavanah is going to be different. But to the extent that the kavanah is powerful, to the extent that the kavanah is actually making your organs change their function, and then participating in your understanding, to that degree, it changes your nefesh, it changes your future. Is each of us located in some specific part of the great man, and does this have a connection with our purpose or mission or not? Yeah. So when Adam Rishon was created, the original soul was in the shape of a human being. And every soul is in the shape of a human being, because the soul dresses in the human, and then through attention, it moves within the body and animates all the different organs. So every organ has a different energy of the soul that's animating it and making it function the way that it functions. So the soul, in the big shape of it, contains everything that the physical body contains. It's just in the world of concept. It's in the world of source. It's the reason why the body looks the way that it does. And so in that world of source, in that world of causation, there is a big man that represents all the potential souls that can manifest, that can interact with life. So each individual has a source, has like a point within the big body that they represent. And there can be many individuals that represent a specific point. And the body has trillions of cells. So each individual has a relationship with those souls who represent the same organ. And this is not only in this specific generation, but in all generations. So these relationships create networks between people, and it creates ways of thinking. It creates also entanglements where groups of people think similarly at similar times. And as some people of the group change how they think, the other people of the group will be influenced. And ultimately, we all influence everyone. Every thought that each individual has affects all of humanity and everything else, all creatures and beyond. So there's a very tight link between all of us, and yet we have our individuality. And this is exactly what he was talking about in the Degel when he was describing these two sides that a person needs to remain aware of, that we are the individual, we're just one, and we're everything to that one, because that's all we are, that's what we were given to take charge of. And at the same time, we're everybody, we're everything, we're impacting everything, and we're having an influence on things that are way beyond our awareness, are way beyond our scope of understanding. So we all are parts of that big man, and we all come from a specific place, and we have relationships based on the functions of this bigger man. And the bigger man functions similarly to how an individual functions, and similarly to how we function physically and how our organs interact, and the way we receive sustenance from the air and from the food, and how the food gets digested. All this is allegoric language to how the spirit works, how the spirit world interconnects, how the different souls interact with each other, how the different functions of leadership create the stress or relief within the body. All these things are represented perfectly between the spiritual and the physical. So this language, to be able to unite the two, is what's going to free humanity from the enslavement that they currently have to each other, that is not suitable to their biology, it's not suitable to their real spiritual nature, because it doesn't work with the physical nature. It doesn't represent the real truth. So this is the underlying current of what direction our soul is going to take. And then we all have our individual mission, our individual purpose, that has a lot to do with the previous entanglements that our organ has gone through, the organ that we represent in the spiritual man, has gone through in the history of humanity. So throughout human history, this specific organ, the man in general, the whole man, has been through all kinds of trauma and abuse that needs to be repaired. But specifically, the organ that an individual comes from has been through a history that needs to be repaired, and so that individual is going to experience experiences that represent the damage that was previously done to this organ. And this is so that the spirit can receive a specimen, can receive an understanding of the disease, of what's bothering this organ, so that it can try to heal. So when we come into this world, first we get it hit with whatever is already there. We have to take in all the toxicity that's already in the collective, and as we grow, we become aware of the toxicity and we start healing. We start healing ourselves from the toxicity. We start regaining awareness to our true nature, regaining awareness to our resilience, to our power of healing and recovering and becoming ourselves again and again and again. So as we take on more power so that we can heal, so then we start fulfilling our mission. Our mission is to re-understand the spiritual side of that organ, the relationship between the creator, the spiritual man, the glory of the design of who we really are, and to bring that into the manifested truth, the life that we live, the way that we behave and interact. So that's our mission, which is individual to each one experiencing, to each aspect of the greater soul, of the collective soul. When you say the big man, you mean Adam HaKadmon, and is Adam HaKadmon deriving from the source of Adam and Eve? So we can call him Adam HaKadmon, but in general we can just say that between the creator and the created, there is the intention. So we're not currently fulfilling the intention. We're not currently at the level where we are at peace with what was created. So therefore, we try to become something that was designed by our Creator, which represents the ultimate perfection of who He created us to be. So that's sort of the midpoint between the Creator and the created. That's the part that we can try to emulate, we can try to become. We can't try to become the Creator Himself, because the Creator Himself is beyond our grasp. We don't even know who we're interacting with. So when we try to become Him, we're trying to become His design, His purpose, His way of seeing us. That's what we're trying to become. So that idea, that concept of who He wants us to be, of who He designed us to be, is what comes down in Adam Kadmon, in Atzilus, in Bria, in Yetzira. See, these are all different interpretations of what does He see, and that depends already on the depth of the neshama, of how deep it's perceiving. So, for each one of us, we perceive that reality differently. We perceive it differently because of our limitations, in the sense that we can't see as big as we need to see. And we perceive it differently also because we're looking from a different angle. We're seeing it from a different aspect. So, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu created man, the first man that He created, Adam Rishon, He created him in perfect form, which means that He, in the history of humanity, was the closest to representing that ideal that we were designed to be. And then we lost it, and then it went sour. It didn't work out so well. And we're going to work through our issues, we're going to work through our difficulties until we can figure it out again. But Adam Rishon represents the closest to that ideal that humanity has ever seen. And then once we lost it, since then, so Moshe Rabbeinu represents getting close to that ideal. Shlomo HaMelech represents getting the closest to that ideal. But we're only going to see that ideal play out in actual manifestation when the world will unite, when there will be peace. Because that's the only environment where that type of creature can survive. That type of creature cannot survive in a hostile environment. It can't survive in conflict. The Holy Spirit, cannot live in a place that is not peaceful, in a place that is not designed for something deeper, something more. So Adam Rishon had access to what we call the Gan Eden. He had access to a human being that is a pleasure to be. And we're going to rediscover that truth. We're going to rediscover that reality when humanity is ready. How do you know which organ you are? It's not simple today, especially because today we're told who we are. We're told who we are so many times until we remember. So how are we going to know who we are, who we were before what we were told? There's no real way. But if we look at our nature, we should try to discover what drives us. What are we similar to others? What are we different than others? If we would try to compare ourselves to an animal, what type of animal are we closest to? Just to start creating definition, because this was the language of nature to describe our organs. So, for example, the zodiac, the mazalas, so the 12 mazalas are considered to be 12 faces of the Creator, 12 different ways of how He interacts with creation. And each face is a representative of a personality trait, of a certain truth. And it's represented with animals, many of them. So as we become aware of this language more, we can try to understand the details of the body and how the different organs interact with each other. But this is a very deep study. This is a very deep wisdom that's been long forgotten from the face of the planet. And it will be rediscovered when humanity realizes its